While most high school seniors applying to college are now waiting for acceptance letters, younger students are just now thinking about college. Jamie Behan, a Stanford graduate who co-founded and leads the college admissions support company Crimson Education, is sharing his expertise with us on this process. Obviously a very grueling process for many, Jamie.
For sure, and it's only getting more competitive, particularly with test optional in recent years.
And for thinking about where to go to college and how to get in can be so overwhelming. I know I sent in about 20 different applications. How should students and families start?
So I think ideally between age 10 to 14, a child's starting to think about what extracurriculars they might enjoy. They might want to try things like debate and speech and drama and see whether those things resonate with them. Maybe they can try coding at an early age. So you want to ideally have an inclination of what types of extracurriculars might be cool before high school actually begins. Once high school begins, you really want to keep that relentless focus on the academics because your GPA, standardized test scores if you're applying to schools that consider them, as well as activities over the summer play a big role in assessing your academic profile. But really, it's going to be a 4-year marathon of activities that count towards your college application.
And should the strategy be different depending on what kind of university a student plans on attending? For example, Ivy League schools versus other schools. What should they be looking at there?
Yes, definitely. So in my book, Accepted, I focus heavily on the most competitive schools, these Ivy League schools. Generally speaking, if you're thinking about an Ivy League school, you really want to take the SAT and aim for a score of 15, 40 or above, even though it's optional now. You also want to think about AP subjects. I talk a lot about class spam, where in this area of test optional admissions, you do still want to showcase your academic ability in certain subjects. So a lot of the students will be taking between 8 to about 18 AP subjects, which are advanced placement. And then on top of your academic, strengths, you want to think about these competitive summer programs. So one good example would be the MIT RSI program. If you get into that program, your chance of getting into Harvard following that is about 33%. And your chance of getting into an Ivy League school is about 70% following that program. So there's definitely a big focus on academics and summer programs too. But candidates should also not forget the importance of the application essays.
Okay, a very important part. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time on those essays. What's a good way to rank and choose the best universities?
So in the book Accepted, I talk about moneyballing the rankings, and traditional rankings like US News, they will look at things like academic citations of professors to figure out how to rank universities. What I recommend is using something called cross-yield. Cross-yield, if I was to describe this, if you apply to Harvard and Yale and a student chooses Harvard over Yale, that means in the cross-yield, Harvard is winning. So what you can do is you can rank all the various universities based on these peers. So do kids choose UC Berkeley or NYU? Do kids choose Yale or do they choose Columbia? And you can use these cross-yield rankings to then determine, how the school should be placed from 1 to say 40. Now, this works for the really popular competitive schools. It's less useful for lower ranked schools. But what this shows you is that schools like Stanford actually have really emerged at the top of the pack alongside Harvard. And schools like Princeton that have been very popular on US News rankings are actually about 4th or 5th in terms of student preference. So I recommend using cross-yield because it's a better, capture of what students are actually choosing and what the market of employers and stuff actually seems to value more, as opposed to academic citations.
Okay, so has technology and social media changed the application process for students?
Technology has changed things dramatically in the last couple of years. Previously, if you're in a smaller state in America or your high school doesn't have many extracurriculars, you don't really have as much choice as to what you can do in these 4 years of college, or rather 4 years of high school building up to college. But now a lot of my students are doing online extracurricular programs. They're doing things like the John Locke essay competition, or they're doing summer programs online with colleges like Columbia while they're in high school, or they're doing online research through things like the Crimson Research Institute. So these types of online programs mean that there is far more choice and also far more competition for what the bar is. Because previously an admissions officer would realize if you're at a smaller high school, there's less they would actually expect you to do because you can't tap into as much. But online delivery of activities has really opened up the playing field a lot, not only for domestic students, but also international students too. From a social media perspective, social media has meant that when students launch their own projects, which is something I talk a lot about in Accepted, students actually can quickly recruit members from across different schools, even across the state or across the country, for these leadership projects they create, whether previously they could only really recruit in their own high school. So social media is a great tool to help students scale up these projects in a big way and make more impact. it also can be obviously a big distraction.
Obviously, it's really easy to get distracted on that, but definitely opens up the reach, like you said, to be far greater than it was before. Do you have any tips for finding and landing scholarships? College is expensive, so these scholarships are very important for a lot of families.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is traditionally the highest ranked schools in America, these Ivy League schools, Stanford, etc., they tend to have the biggest endowments, the biggest financial aid. So one of the most important things to focus on if you are a student who needs lots of funding is to really take the process extra seriously, because the better the school you get into, the more chance they'll have financial aid to support you. A lot of these top schools have got need-blind financial aid. So they look at your parents' income and assets, and they subsidize the tuition to make it feasible to afford it. So if you go to, for example, Harvard's website, they have the Harvard Net Price Calculator, and you can actually type in all of your information and see what types of aid packages you could actually receive. So I think the more you need funding, the more you need to really put an effort in high school to open up those top options. But I guess other options would be, in-state tuition, and you can also even look at community colleges, which have great transfer programs for some of the higher ranked universities for the last 2 years. But my number one recommendation is try and build that Ivy League quality candidacy and get into those schools that have amazing financial aid.
And how can students and families learn more from you and your organization? Obviously, a lot of information out there.
So I guess Accepted is the new book out on Amazon. You can just go ahead and search Accepted Crimson Education. You'll find that real fast. Or you can go to our website, crimsoneducation.org, and you can hear about all of our different students and get tips, journeys, and free resources as well.
Anything to help. This process is hard. So we appreciate your time and your tips that you just gave us. And for more tips on getting into college, check out Jamie's new book that he just told us about, Accepted: Secrets to Gaining Admission to the World's Top Universities. And good luck to all the students out there. Jamie, thanks so much.
Thank you. Cheers.